1 inch equals 284 feet, or roughly the length of a football field. Your location is marked by the flashing light. It is Friday, June 26, 1778. The British Army has pitched camp at the village of Monmouth Courthouse. The brush huts and tents of 21,000 men and women form a 5-mile-long defensive arc, extending from the courthouse all the way to the head of the Manasquan River. From a distance, militia and Continental Army officers look on with anger as rebel farms burn. The following day, Saturday, June 27th, is a day of rest for the British. As they relax, small parties of militia and Continentals harass British picket guards as skirmishing lasts into the night. Meanwhile, farther west in Englishtown, just off the map, a Continental Army advance force of 5,000 men assembles. Late in the afternoon,
That's annoying.
General George Washington gives the commander of this force, Major General Charles Lee, orders for battle. Lee is to assault the rear of the British column in the morning. Washington cautions that it must be a partial attack. Under no circumstances is Lee to be drawn into a major battle. Sunday, June 28, 4 a.m. The British Army rises early. Lieutenant General Kniphausen leads out the 2nd Division Infantry. The baggage wagons begin to follow, but there are so many that hours pass before the entire line can move. Militia riders spot them and race back to Englishtown with the news: the British are marching. 6 a.m. General Lee sends out a reconnaissance party. An hour later, he sets his entire advance force in motion. Meanwhile, to the west, Washington sends his main army marching eastward in support of Lee. Lee's reconnaissance party reaches Spotswood Middlebrook just in time to witness a skirmish between militia and Loyalist Rangers. A few minutes later, General Lee arrives, but he is delayed by conflicting scouting reports that take time to sort out. Back at Monmouth Courthouse, all of the British baggage wagons are finally moving towards New York. About 9 a.m., Sir Henry Clinton leads out the 1st Division, leaving Lord Cornwallis to guard the rear. 10 a.m., Lee's Continentals approach Monmouth Courthouse. He and Brigadier General Anthony Wayne are pleased to discover that the British rear guard appears to be quite small, about 1,500 men. Hoping to trap the British, Lee divides his force in 2. He sends Wayne with 3 battalions toward the village, while Lee, with Generals Lafayette and Scott and 10 field pieces, circle through the woods. But little does Lee know that the rest of the British 1st Division is just out of sight, over the next hill. And as Wayne's men skirmish with the rear guard, the 1st Division responds. Lee is stunned to see 8,500 British and Germans advancing directly at him. He immediately pulls back and scrambles for a defensive position. Things go from bad to worse as communications break down. General Scott repositions his 1,500 light infantry without informing Lee. Now outnumbered 3 to 1, Lee hastens his retreat, hoping his artillery can somehow slow the enemy advance. But all is not lost. The Continental Main Army has fortunately moved to within 2.5 miles of Lee. As Washington reaches a crossroads, he is warned that the British might circle behind him on the road from Upper Monmouth Courthouse. So he orders Major General Greene to guard the road with a brigade of infantry and 4 field pieces. At first, the British proceed cautiously in pursuit of Lee. Clinton has no idea where Continental troops are positioned or how many there are. When the advancing British threaten to cut off Scott's detachment, Scott retreats to the Amboy Road. But once Clinton learns that Lee's force is small, he becomes bolder. He intends to trap Lee at the Spotswood Middlebrook Bridge. Clinton dispatches Loyalist Rangers and British light infantry to circle behind the bridge, while he leads most of the 1st Division in a race to overtake the Continentals. The Hessian Grenadiers and 5th Brigade remain behind to guard the rear. As the first men of Lee's column cross the Spotswood Bridge, they report to Washington that Lee's partial attack has failed. A disturbed Washington hurries ahead to confront Lee. But there is little time to talk as they come under artillery fire. The enemy is minutes away. As the British approach the bridge, Clinton orders the 3rd Brigade across the brook through the Craig Farm. South of the brook, Clinton rushes the rest of the 1st Division directly at Lee's Continentals. Washington hurriedly improvises a defense to slow the British advance. He orders Wayne and 900 men into nearby woods. He leaves Lee to fight a delaying action at a hedged fence that separates the Ray and Parsonage farms. Lee has 3 battalions and 4 guns. Washington then gallops back across the bridge to assemble a defensive line along a hill on Henry Perrine's farm. This line becomes 3 lines as more of Washington's army arrives. He sends other advanced force units back to Englishtown to rest. In the meantime, the British continue to press forward. A screen of light dragoons or cavalry leads the advance, followed by 3 infantry columns. Spotting Lee's men, Clinton rides out in front and screams, "Charge, Grenadiers!" propelling 1,500 Grenadiers into battle. Wayne's men fire point blank into the Guards Brigade, but are then quickly overwhelmed, fleeing for their lives with British Guardsmen, Grenadiers, and light dragoons in close pursuit. Back at the hedged fence, Lee's men have only moments to prepare for the British onslaught. As they take position, officers of the 1st New Jersey Regiment realize that they're being outflanked by redcoats north of the brook. So they march their regiment to the bridge, leaving Lee with only 2 battalions.
Wop wop.
Taking the road, Sir Henry Clinton leads his light dragoons behind Wayne's men. A volley stops the dragoons. As the British near the fence, almost 2,000 men open fire. The Continentals get off 8 to 10 volleys before the British light dragoons and guardsmen turn the Continentals' flanks and force Lee's men to retreat for the bridge. Sensing victory at hand, the Grenadiers plunge down the hill in heated pursuit. But it is too late. As they cross the bridge and engage, the Continental Field Artillery opens fire, killing the Grenadier commander along with many of his men. The survivors straggle back to the hedged fence. Meanwhile, north of the brook, Continental gunners also halt the British 3rd Brigade. If he is to win the battle, Clinton must silence the Continental artillery. Bringing his field artillery to the Parsonage Hill, he unleashes a terrifying cannonade. During 3 hours, over 1,200 rounds of British shot and shell will rain down on Perrine's Hill, but clouds of gun smoke and the distance render accuracy impossible, and few, if any, Continental guns are destroyed. All the while, the British infantry remains frozen in place, unable to advance. Washington, concerned about British movement north of Spotswood Northbrook, sends Lafayette's men to ambush any British crossing the brook. As the artilleries roar, Lieutenant Colonel David Ray, an officer who grew up on these farms, makes a brilliant tactical suggestion. He recommends placing artillery on Coombs Hill overlooking the British position. Washington agrees and orders Ray to find Major General Greene and lead him to the hill. Meanwhile, the 2 armies lie prone to the ground, terrorized by the hail of shot, sweltering in the 100-degree heat, and desperately thirsty. Before the day is over, almost as many men will die of exhaustion, dehydration, and sunstroke as from enemy action. By 3:45, Continental artillery on Coombs Hill sending cannonballs ricocheting through enemy lines. Clinton must face a harsh reality. The Continentals have won the artillery duel. He cannot defeat the rebels. The British have no choice but to pull back. But Clinton can't retreat just yet. He must first wait for the troops he sent north to return to the safety of his main army. He brings forward his Hessian grenadiers to cover the retreat. Washington seizes upon this change of fortune and launches another partial attack. He sends Colonel Joseph Silly with 2 battalions of light infantry to attack the Scots in Sutphen's apple orchard, forcing them to fight a rearguard action as they hurry to rejoin their main army. Anxious for glory, General Anthony Wayne requests permission to attack with 13 Pennsylvanians. But Washington, unwilling to risk heavy casualties, gives Wayne just 400 men. An angered Wayne throws his small detachment against the rear British unit, the 1st Battalion of British Grenadiers. Despite their exhaustion, the 600-plus Grenadiers drive back Wayne, forcing him to take cover at the Parsonage Farm. But the Grenadiers' success is also their undoing. Their pursuit of Wayne brings them within range of the Continental artillery, which opens fire and pushes the Grenadiers back. It is now after 6:30. The men have clashed since midday in 100-degree heat. Neither army has the strength to continue. Most of the British 1st Division has withdrawn to the village, while the artillery and Grenadiers occupy a hill on the Ray homestead. Preparing to resume the fight in the morning, Washington moves his units forward and brings up reserves from Englishtown. But as night falls, the British quietly slip away, leaving their campfires burning to fool the Continentals. They will march non-stop for 13 miles until they reach the Kniphausen's division. The next morning, the Continentals advance, only to discover the enemy has fled. After losing to the British at Long Island, Kip's Bay, Forts Washington and Lee, Brandywine, and Germantown, Washington has earned a glorious